recently been a big thing in Australia, that we ask consumers to do a lot of things but they're not paid. And you can't, you know, it's all very nice to do consumer research. Come along, I'll get paid my X amount of dollars an hour to sit down here and chat with you, but you catch the bus in, you talk to me, and I'll give you nothing for it. And quite rightly, they're pretty cheesed off about that. And so we built into the research grant a facility to pay people. Now that's raised issues in itself, and we've had people come along purely and simply because they wanted the money. And it could be questions about how much in recovery they are. So it's a dilemma, and I don't know how you overcome that, but clearly that is what we had done, and we deliberately chose to do that, but it does have problems, and I think that's something that does warrant some talking about. I've already been through those issues. So we chose not to talk about recovery as either complete or social. We decided that the definition of recovery would come from consumers, that if they thought that they were in recovery, then that was good enough for us. Recruitment of participants, we did not have any criteria that said it has to have been so long since your last admission or whatever, or that you had to have X amount of whatever. We just said if you think you are in recovery, then we want to hear from you. But we have taken notes of all those different things. We did have exclusion criteria. We only spoke to people who were adult, 18 to 65, and who were not actively psychotic at the time that we spoke to them. They were really the only exclusion criteria that we had. As I said, the methodology, mainly qualitative, we wanted to hear their story, and we talked about that. We wanted to hear their story. The objectives of the research. One of them, and these aren't necessarily in order of priority, to provide a consumer perspective on recovery from schizophrenia. Clearly that's very important. Describe what factors consumers who define themselves as recovered from schizophrenia considered to be most important in their recovery. To identify which factors are reported most frequently by consumers as important in their recovery. To compare and contrast those factors with those factors that are identified in the outcome literature on which integrate good prognosis, you know, that is early onset versus late onset, rapid onset as opposed to a long period onset. Provided a consumer definition of recovery, so that is what a consumers say recovery is, and we wanted to make some recommendations for service delivery based on those findings. This is the interview we used. We asked all of the consumers these questions. And they were very open-ended, and what we used were just prompts throughout. So the first question was the person's journey of recovery, and we'd say things like, can you tell me more about that? What does that mean for you? When you've said that, can you explain, etc. So they were just very, very open-ended and general prompts that we've used throughout the qualitative part of the study. We asked people about the important factors, you know, like, who's been really helpful for you, or what has really helped. We asked them what it was about them that enabled them to actually recover. So we want to know about their personal qualities. You know, we said, you know, we know it's often difficult for people to talk about themselves. So what is it about you that has enabled you to get on and do this? So getting them to tell us, you know, what's helped them. We also asked them about the role of medication if they didn't volunteer it. But how we had done this was that we had the story first. So the assumption is what was most important for people is what they would tell us first in response to what, you know, can you tell us about your journey of recovery or your story of recovery, that would hear the most important things first there. But then we had these other list of questions that we would ask if they hadn't mentioned it in that first thing, and we're able to determine, you know, which are the ones that we've had to prompt with, which I think is important in a way, because, you know, if you're asking someone to tell you their story, you can't then go and assume that it's important that medication did play a part or health professionals were important, but we're just asking that just to hear those responses if they don't give it to us. And we ask them about what they think about their illness at this present point in time, and about what their definition of recovery is and how they would feel if they had another episode. In the standardised questionnaire, which is the second part of the study, we look at these factors there. You know, is there a family history, the age of onset of the disorder, and you can see what we're getting at by asking all these. We look at, you know, their pre-morbid and current social functioning, their current social networks, and the type of treatment that they obtained for their disorder, if they're on medication, how many hospitalisations they had and the length of those hospitalisations, what their symptomology is and their relationship with healthcare professionals. So we ask all those things in the process as well. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the NUDIST program of qualitative data analysis. Anyone familiar with NUDIST? No? Oh, NUDIST, that actually stands... This is an Australian development. And I don't know, yeah, okay. I've only referred to it as NUDIST. It's numerical, unstructured, anyway, it's an acronym. It is shortened. It means something. I'm sorry, I can't tell you what it was. But it's people from La Trobe.
So you didn't invent it.
I didn't invent it, no. It's a qualitative data analysis, and it's really based on grounded theory. Yeah, to analyse qualitative research from a grounded theory perspective. And it's developed by Lynn and Tom Richards at La Trobe University in Melbourne. And so what they've done is they've developed this computer package called NUDIST. And what you can do is actually set up a way of analysing for themes. So it's, you know, how do you normally do qualitative data analysis, is looking for themes and content and that, and you'd cut up your bit of paper and you'd stick them all in little piles and go through and count them and all that sort of